Hello everyone. Creflo Dollar challenges John MacArthur, declaring boldly, "Your legalism is killing the church." And this fiery exchange between two of the most influential voices in modern Christianity has set the stage for a debate that dives deep into the very heart of faith, grace, and the role of the church in today's world, with both men representing vastly different theological approaches that have shaped millions of lives in churches worldwide. On one side stands Creflo Dollar, known for his charismatic preaching, prosperity gospel teachings, and emphasis on faith, grace, and abundance, often drawing both admiration and criticism for his bold belief that God's blessings extend to health, wealth, and victory in every aspect of life. And on the other side is John MacArthur, the long-standing pastor, theologian, and author, whose ministry is rooted in expository teaching and a stern commitment to Reformed theology, marked by a no-nonsense approach that calls believers to strict obedience, holiness, and a resistance to what he sees as worldly compromise in the church. The clash between Dollar and MacArthur is not just about personality, it is a collision of theological worlds, with Creflo accusing MacArthur of suffocating the spirit of the gospel through rigid, legalistic frameworks that he says have bound believers in fear rather than liberating them in grace, while MacArthur and his supporters often see Dollar's approach as watering down the seriousness of sin, distorting biblical teaching, and exploiting faith for financial gain. When Creflo recently spoke out, it wasn't in vague terms. He specifically pointed to the way legalism has damaged believers by making them feel unworthy, unloved, and trapped in endless cycles of guilt instead of walking in the freedom Christ died to give. And he passionately argued that the church must break free from what he called chains of religious control that look more like Pharisaical rulebooks than the good news of the gospel. This bold statement sent ripples across congregations, podcasts, social media platforms, and theological circles, with some praising Creflo for finally confronting what many everyday Christians have long felt, that too often church culture has leaned toward judgment instead of compassion, exclusion instead of inclusion, rules instead of relationship, while others blasted him for what they considered a reckless attack on one of the most respected voices of doctrinal clarity in the modern age. John MacArthur, of course, is not one to shy away from controversy. Throughout his ministry, he has openly condemned what he calls false gospels, including prosperity preaching, charismatic movements, and seeker-sensitive models of church, arguing that they appeal to emotions and flesh rather than true spiritual transformation. And so when Creflo's words reached him and his circle, it only reignited a decades-long tension between grace-centered movements and law-centered teaching. The bigger question this raises for millions of believers is, where do we draw the line between living under grace and living under obedience? Creflo Dollar insists that grace is not a license to sin, but a gift that empowers believers to rise above sin without being crushed under constant condemnation, while John MacArthur insists that without strict commitment to biblical commands, the church risks moral collapse and compromise with the world. In this battle of perspectives, what's at stake is not just theology. It's the direction of the modern church, especially for younger generations who are leaving traditional church settings in search of authenticity, love, and freedom. Supporters of Creflo argue that he is giving voice to those wounded by rigid church systems that emphasized outward appearances over inward transformation, while MacArthur's followers believe he is safeguarding the truth of Scripture from being diluted by culture-driven teachings. The intensity of this conflict shows just how divided the church remains in balancing law and grace, truth and love, doctrine and experience. And the reality is that both perspectives hold powerful influence, shaping how sermons are preached, how worship is led, how communities are built, and ultimately how people experience God. Whether one sees Creflo's challenge as prophetic truth or dangerous error, it has undeniably sparked a global conversation about the role of legalism in faith, the sufficiency of grace, and the kind of church future generations will inherit. As the debate continues to unfold, one thing is clear: this clash between Creflo Dollar and John MacArthur is more than a disagreement. It is a defining moment in the story of the modern church. Forcing believers everywhere to ask themselves whether they are truly living in the freedom Christ promised or still bound by chains of fear, rules, and condemnation disguised as holiness. And while both men may never see eye to eye, their voices ensure that this tension will continue to challenge and shape the church for years to come. Thanks for watching.